Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the phenomenal growth of the world's absolute biggest single sport event. We're talking about a competition that has actually outgrown the Olympic Games in cumulative global viewership. Yep, the FIFA World Cup. We're going to trace its wild journey from a really humble, frankly precarious little experiment all the way to the massive continent-spanning spectacle we know today. Let's kick things off with a massive number, 48. That is the record-breaking number of national teams gearing up to compete in the 2026 tournament. For a quarter of a century, fans got totally used to the standard 32-team format. So jumping to 48 is an unprecedented leap forward for the global game. It's a number that completely redefines the scale of the whole shebang. But to really grasp how wild that expansion is, we've got to look back at a much, much smaller number, 13. Back in 1930, the very first tournament was honestly a risky experiment with only 13 participating teams. There were no grueling qualifiers. It was literally invite only, and just convincing teams to show up was half the battle. So let's head back to the very beginning. The first World Cup in Uruguay, 1930. The contrast here is absolutely staggering. Today, teams hop on a quick, highly connected global flight, right? But back in 1930, smack in the middle of the Great Depression, traveling to South America was a massive ordeal. European teams literally had to endure a grueling 15-day boat trip across the Atlantic on a ship called the Conte Verde just to get to Uruguay. It was such a huge commitment that only 4 European nations, France, Belgium, Yugoslavia, and Romania, actually made the trip. The whole thing was spearheaded by FIFA president Jules Rimet, who had this grand dream of a championship completely separate from the Olympics. Uruguay was the perfect choice to host, since they were celebrating their centennial of independence and were already the back-to-back Olympic champs. History happened fast. France's Lucien Laurent netted the very first goal, and it all wrapped up with a tense final where the host nation, Uruguay, beat their neighbors Argentina 4-2 to claim the very first title. Moving into our next era, survival, and the infamous Maracanazo. Now, World War II obviously forced the whole tournament to hit pause in 42 and 46. But I absolutely loved this crazy little historical micro-narrative. While the games were suspended, the actual physical golden trophy survived because an Italian football official named Ottorino Barassi literally hid it in an old shoebox under his bed. The Nazis actually searched his house, but they completely overlooked the shoebox, saving the greatest prize in sports. When the games finally came back in 1950, we got one of the biggest shockers in sports history, the Maracanazo. Imagine this, a staggering, record-breaking crowd of nearly 200,000 people packed into Brazil's massive Maracanã Stadium. The heavily favored host nation, Brazil, only needed a tie to win it all. But Uruguay stunned them, pulling off a 2-1 victory that plunged the entire host nation into profound shock. Which brings us to a huge turning point, the era of Pelé and the dawn of global television. This is where the tournament truly exploded into a modern, global phenomenon. We go from the miracle of Bern on early, grainy TV screens in '54 to a 17-year-old kid named Pelé completely dominating and winning his first title in '58. By 1970, the world was watching Pelé's legendary Brazilian squad dazzle in spectacular color TV. Brazil actually won their third title that year, meaning they got to keep that original Jules Rimet trophy forever. And that, of course, led directly to 1974, when the brand new, iconic trophy designed by Silvio Gazzaniga was introduced. As the global audience skyrocketed, so did the drama. Let's look at the tournament's massive expansion. You can really see how the sport globalized just by tracking these numbers. For decades, it was strictly capped at 16 teams. Then, boom, 24 teams in Spain, 82. To handle the booming global interest, it bumped up to 32 teams in France, 98, bringing in so much more cultural diversity and new styles of play. And now, we're gearing up for 48. And with that massive expansion came these absolutely unforgettable, etched-in-history moments. 1986 gives us Diego Maradona's infamous Hand of God goal, followed literally minutes later by his breathtaking goal of the century. Jump to 94, and you've got Roberto Baggio tragically missing a penalty in the very first final decided by a shootout. We witnessed Zinedine Zidane's shocking headbutt and red card in the 2006 final. In 2010, the tournament finally went to Africa, ending with Spain's beautiful tiki-taka style securing the win. And, of course, in 2014, the sheer, unimaginable national wound of Brazil's 7-1 defeat against Germany on their own home soil. Now let's talk about the modern legends who have absolutely rewritten the history books. First up, we've got to give it up for the ultimate goal scorers. Scoring even once at this level is the pinnacle of a player's career, right? But Germany's Miroslav Klose, he racked up an all-time record of 16 career goals. And equally mind-blowing is France's Just Fontaine, who scored an untouchable 13 goals in just one single tournament back in 1958. No way anyone is touching that anytime soon. But when you look at overall sustained dominance, Lionel Messi is quite literally in a league of his own. The guy holds the record for the most appearances with 26-plus matches, the most overall minutes played, and he is the only player in history to walk away with 2 golden balls, the award for the tournament's absolute best player. And all that statistical dominance perfectly set the stage for Qatar 2022. Talk about a fairy tale ending. A breathless, incredibly intense 3-3 final against France that ultimately had to be decided by a nail-biting penalty shootout. For a lot of fans, it was simply the greatest final in the history of the sport and the perfect crowning moment for Messi's career. So, where do we go from here? Welcome to 2026 and the new frontier. The sheer logistical scale of what's coming up is, well, it's mind-blowing. For the very first time ever, the tournament will be spread across 3 host countries: the US, Mexico, and Canada. We're talking 16 different host cities. And to make room for those 48 teams we talked about earlier, they're introducing a brand new knockout stage, the round of 32. To really put that into perspective, just look at the jump in the sheer volume of games. We are going from 64 matches in Qatar to a whopping 104 matches in 2026. That is 40 extra games. It completely transforms the duration and global footprint of the event. We're talking about a 39-day, non-stop festival of football. So I'm going to leave you with a question to chew on. As this absolute giant of a tournament continues to evolve from its quirky 13-team origins into a massive 104-match spectacle, will this 48-team expansion dilute the concentrated magic and exclusivity of the games? Or by opening the doors to so many new nations, are we about to kick off a brand new, highly inclusive, golden era for global football? Think about the incredible journey we just mapped out and decide for yourself. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.